Hello, good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this special presentation hosted by the Afro American Cultural Initiative titled The Lives in Me Cultural Reveal. Welcome home. My name is Nkira Jezia, and I'm the creative director here at the Afro American Academy / Afro American TV, which is a youth led project management initiative to teach podcasting skills and professional development to the next generation. Tonight, we'll be hearing from our past winners from our Lives in Me initiative about what their experience has been like since discovering their African cultural heritages. And then towards the end, we'll be having our cultural reveal with our latest winner from 2022, Melanie Best. So we will start with some opening remarks from our founder and director, Mr. Marlon Solomon, about the organization, the history of the Lives in Me Challenge, and a few other updates before we get started with our introduction of our guest tonight. So Marlon, I'll send it over to you.
Thank you, Ikiru. You do such wonderful introductions. I'm so every time after you finish the introduction, I always feel like so much more important. So yeah, welcome everyone to the sixth edition. The fifth edition of the Lives in Me Cultural Reveal. This is a competition that's near and dear to my heart and central to the mission of the organization. This is the first program of the organization. We started this in 2018, and I'm going to give it to you a little bit of the history. But before I do that, the Afro American Culture Initiative, we're a nonprofit based here in Boston. Our mission is to build bridges in the multicultural spaces using technology, education, and transportation. So we do restorative work, and we build bridges through our programming and educational programming for youth, as our dear Inkarus just said. So before we go too long, I want to just go and just thank everyone for the support over the years. We've been very excited about this program. It is, like I said, it's the beginning of everything. We started it back in May of 2018, if you believe, and this program was like to bring my. So if people don't know me, my mom is from the Commonwealth of Virginia. She's African American. My dad is from Nigeria, and this program was developed to bring these two sides together. So we started the Lives in Me program. This is some of the initial people that started it. Dr. Davis, who was on our board at the time, Justina Crawford, who is I will call her Justina the First. We'll get to that in a little bit. And then Fabienne Mondesir, who was working with the Harvard DNA genetics team. And she, if I'm the father of Lives in Me, she's undoubtedly the mother of Lives in Me. She's a good friend, and she helped us. These are the people that started on that first day a long time ago in 2018. So yeah, this is Justina the First. She had already got her DNA test, and it was just about her working with me to so when she got her results, she was Bamileke of Cameroon, and we started a program there, and then we started looking for our first winner. Just when I met her, one of the first things I wanted to do was to find somebody in the community that would help, like, personalize, this whole process. Well, it's not just some data from a DNA test kit, but really a person that is from the location, and we call these people culture guides. And our first culture guide was Michelle Mateno. She's from the Bamileke tribe, where Justina tested positive from. And this picture here to the left is actually a beautiful story behind it. So I met Michelle at an event here at one of the universities, and I was telling her about the program. She was really excited about it, and I was like, okay, look, I got this person that just tested positive for Bamileke, so I'd love you to meet her. And one thing or the other happened, and I lost contact with her. So like months go by, I'm like searching through all my Rolodex, like what is going on? I can't find this person. So we were at the African Festival of Boston, and we had already found our next winner, which was Michelle, who we'll meet in a little bit, and not this Michelle, another Michelle, and um, while we're giving out the awards and letting people know what's going on with Michelle, the winner. I'll call her Smalley for I'll call her Smalley for intensive purposes. But yeah, Smalley Michelle, she was the first winner, and she actually also tested positive for Bamileke. So while we were out there and we were telling people where she came from, who comes shouting out loud? You know, Africans, they can really shout. So she was shouting, hey, she's one of us, she's one of us. And it was the lady that I lost contact with. So this picture actually is just a beautiful picture because of that, Justina was able to go hang out with a real Bamileke family and experience and ask questions and eat food and really immerse themselves in the culture. So I thought that picture is always important. So I always like to thank Michelle for all what she did for us in the beginning. Like I said, the first winner was Michelle Turner Young, who has just been like her transformative um, where she's transformed from when I met her to when she learned about it and how deep she went into learning about her culture and ethnicity was just astounding. She's here today, so I'm not going to go too much into all the details so she can introduce herself, but she was the first winner. This back then we had a whole elaborate thing. We used to be at the Museum of Fine Arts, so we had this event where the cultural reveal was out there, and like not just on Zoom. There was no Zoom back then. That's how old this program is. And so yeah, and I love this picture of her just like learning for the first time where she comes from and everything. So it was really awesome. These are some more pictures. We had drummers. There's this actual great video of Michelle dancing, because Michelle's such a great dancer. So this is how it started. So this was on October 25th. Wow, 2018. That's quite a while ago. And these are her twins, who are now all grown up women now. But yeah, that's how it started. And then this is us right before we found Michelle found us again. But we were at the African Festival of Boston, and yeah, we had raised some money for her to go to Africa, which then COVID hit, so a lot of things didn't go the way it was supposed to go. But this is us the next year with our second winner, Shireen Russell, who actually tested for Tikar, Hausa, Fulani of Cameroon, and Ruby of Guinea, Equatorial Guinea. So she had a lot of stuff going on. And she was like Jamaican born, but here in Boston. And yeah, she won, and she's been a great friend of us ever since. Um, and this is her culture reveal. So you can see some of the same characters are here. Justina, Smalley, Fabienne. That's my son, who is now huge and big. But yeah, this is how it started back in the day. And then we now had Jessica, who's actual. A lot of the stuff went virtual because of the pandemic during her win. But yeah, this was Jessica Pomer, who is a good friend of Smalley Michelle, and that was just a great experience for her. She has grown also, and then we now had our last winner, who is Stacy Haynes, who might be joining us later on today. She tested positive for Sierra Leone. Yeah, so the Mende tribe of Sierra Leone. And yeah, she had a great video. She was really interested in making sure that her daughter was knowing of what her tribe was. So that was her motivation. It was a beautiful thing. Um, and then finally, we have our newest winner, Melanie Best. And then I guess that's kind of all the history till now. But I want to say that, this growing family of people who have been in this program all this time has really made it so that we're growing, and the more people that come on board, it just turns out to be more beautiful. And now it's like it's a sisterhood. One of these days we're gonna get a brother, but it's a sisterhood right now, and I'm good. I'm good for now, But maybe before we get to the 10th, we'll get one guy. But for now, it is a lot of beautiful young women who are just passionate about their heritage and wanting to learn more about themselves. And this knowledge, I'll let them speak to it. The reason why I did it, is because obviously I know that there's something we need some grounding as African Americans. We need some source of not just a general whole continent of that we are connected to, right? They're people, and our people have skills, and they have personalities, and they have cultural beliefs that guide and shape who we are. And without that grounding, it is hard to know where we're going. You know the old saying, if you don't know where you're going, you don't know where you're coming from, you don't know where you're going to go. So I hope that this program continues to grow, and with you guys helping, I'm sure we will. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Marlon. That was a very beautiful breakdown of the history, and it's just lovely to kind of hear you talk about it so fondly. Obviously, this is your baby, so you're very passionate about the years of work and research that made this what it is today. And also want to really thank you, Michelle and Melanie. I know it's been a long time coming to have this event, so I just appreciate you for being patient with us, and even for everything you're going to share with us tonight. So before I formally introduce you, I just wanted to, make a few remarks as to, why the work at the African American Culture Initiative and the African American Academy is important to me. So, as a first generation Nigerian American, I grew up with a very strong understanding of who I was as a person, growing up in an African home. But living in the United States, so which definitely came with this many challenges as it relates to, figuring out what your cultural identity is. I mean, children in general, obviously, they go through different stages where they're wondering like, who am I? But when you add like this cultural piece, your home culture and then your school culture and your friends culture, like there's a lot of things that kind of, shapes who you are and helps define who you are. um, and actually, I talk about that a lot on my podcast, Conversations from the Diaspora. I always talk about my dad, who he was a Pan Africanist, and he was very intentional about teaching myself and my siblings about the history of the African American specifically, and then the African diaspora as a whole. Again, which is why I'm passionate about hearing these stories of triumph. And it makes me hopeful for the future that so many African Americans are interested in taking this step to learn about their cultural heritages, that they were deprived of, that they were robbed from, and that they're taking action to claim it back. That's a very important thing for someone to be able to take back, what's theirs and what was stolen from them, and then doing the necessary work to educate themselves and get connected, in a way that makes sense for you at, whatever point in life that you are. So, with that, once again, I'm just really happy that we're able to have this discussion, and would love to introduce our wonderful guest tonight. As Marla mentioned earlier, we did have another guest that she might not be joining us tonight, but if she does, we'll still introduce her when she comes on. But we will start with our 2018 winner, Miss Michelle Turner Young. Let me just put her on the big screen. All right. All right. So, Michelle, at 38 years young and hailing from the vibrant city of Boston, Massachusetts, she has embarked on an extraordinary journey that encompasses motherhood, dance, and a commitment to making a difference through movement towards her community. Michelle has carved a unique path for herself as a trailblazer in the world of dance, particularly as the first American International Dance Hall Queen. Her story is one of unwavering ambition, boundless dedication, and a deep rooted passion for movement. So, Michelle, if you can just say a quick hello to our viewers.
Peace, everybody. Welcome. Peace.
Thank you, Michelle. And next, we will go with our recent winner. That's Melanie Best. She has an academic background in the biological sciences, but her heart is for the people. She has worked with a nonprofit Christian organization for over 23 years, helping men and women discover their vision, identity, and purpose. Along with her husband and 4 children, they have served college age students and young professionals in the USA and abroad in Nigeria, Ghana, and South Africa. Her roots trace back to Little Rock, Arkansas, by way of South Carolina and Louisiana, a rich tapestry of matriarchal Christian faith that has sustained and allowed her people to thrive through being enslaved, Jim Crow segregation, and civil rights. Faith in Christ means everything to her, and her family's journey is rich with stories and traditions that are woven into the fabric of her life. So, Melanie, if you can please say hello to our viewers.
Good evening, everybody. I'm glad to be here, and thank you guys for allowing me to explore my cultural journey. I am so excited.
We are
Mhm.
so excited to have you. All right.
Yes.
So we'll just, for the sake of time, we'll go to our questions. And of course, I've already introduced you to, but if you can just tell us a little bit about your family background, as far back as you can go. Um, so Michelle, if you can maybe start us off, tell us a little bit about your family heritage, outside of your African ancestry, but just your American history that you're aware of.
Yes, so born in Portsmouth, Virginia. My mother was from Virginia. My father and his side of the family from New Orleans, Louisiana. So with both of those combined together, I grew up eating a lot of Southern foods. There was gumbo, there was chitlins, there was pork rinds, there was pig feet. There was also a lot of spiritual essence that happened that I didn't realize until I got older, like my great grandma having an altar, us going to an African church where they would come and bless the home with the smoke and do the symbols on the some people might call it witchcraft, but do the symbols on the baseboards of protection. So that's the background that I remember growing up in. And then in the south, in my Portsmouth, Virginia side of the family, my mother's side, we were my grandmother and my mother were like serial entrepreneurs of the hood. So my grandma was one of the first Black women in Portsmouth that had like a casino, a small casino in Portsmouth, and she did catering and offered a lot of services to the community. So those things instilled in me, hence where I am today, and I instill that into my daughters, and that's what I grew up in knowing. And then I can't wait to share what happened after I found out where the bloodline began.
I love it. I love it. How about you, Melanie? Can you tell us a little bit more about your history?
Okay, yeah. I think when I had my first child is when I began that exploration into where did I come from. I was fortunate to know my great great grandmother. We actually shared the same birthday, and she lived to 103 years old. So by knowing her name, that kind of helped me get as far back. But unfortunately, her parents died, and they all were in Arkansas, mostly the northwestern part of Arkansas, and my family, my great grandfather and great grandmother, they bought property in rural areas and grew up in a small Black community called Union Chapel in Arkansas. On my father's side, I remember going to family reunions, and their particular family I know came through Louisiana, and there was a preacher somewhere in there, and from doing like ancestry.com, I think I was able to trace my great great grandfather back to Nova Scotia. And so that particular part of my family, I believe I need to do a little bit more research, but apparently they could have been runaway slaves or a slave community that left the USA, but then migrated back to Southeast Arkansas because German settlers were giving land to ex-slaves. So that's the only little piece of history. But I want to say I have a cousin who's done a little bit of research, and she may have some connection with West Africa, is where her research is found. So again, there's a lot of missing pieces. I've spent a little bit of time on the continent where I have seen the various traditions and even just how God has shown up in it and has carried himself with us and living in us as we have settled here in the USA, not by choice, but by force. And so it is beautiful to see how our stories and how spirituality has played such a key role as in the life of African Americans. So it's beautiful, and I'm glad that I get to continue this journey.
I think that's so powerful what both of you shared. And actually, I think for me, you know, again, being Nigerian American, I can go to my grandmother, I can ask her about her mom and her grandma and everyone else. So I can pinpoint my ancestors in that way. I don't have to, necessarily go to a library or look through any kind of archive or do a lot of digging. So I love what you just said just now, Melanie, as far as like the family reunions. I've always admired that about African Americans because I don't think that many of us as African immigrants do types of family reunions. I mean, there may be something like it, like maybe, attending like a wedding or maybe your community meetings, things of that nature. But this wasn't part of my original questions, but I guess outside of what you two just shared, Michelle, Melanie, how do you get this history? Like your grandparents, did they tell you about it as you were growing up? Like, did you just kind of hear it in passing, or were you very intentional about like asking these questions? Like, how did you build this history for yourself, and how do you share it?
Yeah, it was my great grandma. And shout out to you knowing your great great grandma, because I didn't realize until I got older how many people didn't have their great grandma along with them for the ride. And she would show our culture, I guess, or our history through her actions. So like she always fed us like natural herbs. I remember she would feed us this powder substance. I don't even remember what it was. Like we would all me, my sisters and my cousins would line up and like starch. She would feed us starch, and we was like, what? We didn't know. We just come in, do the, and she always just spoke to us. Like I remember, I carry her with me in spirit now, but she always, we just hung out a lot with our great grandma. Like when she got sick and got her leg amputated, we were all just would surround her bed and just hang out. And I mean, she just poured into us through her actions. And I feel like what I'm remembering mostly is through the food, but also there was just a story behind it with the food that I can't like grasp, but I know now what the meaning of those foods are, what the stories that she was trying to tell us. I hope that makes sense. And even again with the altar, she would make sure that we would go into the sun porch and come with her before she lost her leg. And like I remember just standing in front of the altar as she just had like a Buddha statue on it and like a feather with the peacocks and like pictures of my great uncle, Uncle Joe, and them that were twins. And I just remember that essence growing up, that she just, carried us and taught us through a lot through her actions, and through food. Our family did a lot through food. So that's for me.
Wow, that's so cool. Yeah, on my side, let me see. My uncle invested in technology back in the 80s. And I can remember being in Michigan one spring break, and he decided to take my great grandmother and interview her and ask her, where did you come from? So fast forward, I guess it was probably about almost 20 years ago when I was fishing through some VHSs and I discovered this tape. Because again, I'm looking for answers, and I was there and I remember watching it, but I don't remember everything she said. And that's when I found out like where she was born, which confirmed that she's pretty much been in the same area for all of her life, not really leaving it to travel much, unlike her kids and grandkids. And so for my mom's side, that's what I learned. And again, like I grew up spending summers in the rural parts of Arkansas, but unfortunately, I didn't think to ask any questions. All I thought it was so boring, and there's no cable TV. So that is disappointing. And that's why I know I've made it a point to tell my kids, you got to learn where you come from. And then on my father's side, it was strictly because my dad was kind of in and out, unfortunately. It was strictly just at family reunions because they had family reunions for years and years where they would come together every other year, and somebody would had an actual written record of at least that particular side of the family, because obviously her name was my maiden name, but it was a different name because it's my maternal grandmother. And so that particular line I could hear just like where they came from. And then I always heard my father say there was a preacher in his line. And so he's like, I recall, I think there was a preacher. But it seems like it was a very strict upbringing. And I'm sure that some of it was because of being in the South. And a way of survival was through prayer. and asking God's protection as they traveled the back roads of these rural areas where they often had sundown laws. Which is funny. Only now did I realize that some of those laws existed until the 1980s when I was a young child. Because my grandmother, great grandmother, would act very strange when the sun went down, and I never understood why. She never told me why. But now, as an adult, I look back and I was like, ah, that's why.
Marlon, you had some comments?
Oh yeah. No, this is that's soaking things in. Well, the first thing I wanted to say, I think, was about while Africa, while so I have both sides, right? So my, one of the things that gives me the insight, just having that ability to compare and contrast, and that's why this program started. But so on the African side, the reason why they don't have a family reunion is because they have so many parties on everything else. So like they don't name it specifically family reunion, but I mean graduations, funeral, birthday, everybody showing up. So that's the family reunion. But that now goes to part of this eternal search that we as African Americans feel that we have to actually specifically name it family reunion because it is something that we must specifically make additional effort in order to achieve. And I think that is one of the I went to a reparations meeting this morning, and of course a lot of the stuff that I deal with I feel is part of reparations, the cultural reconstruction and cultural supports that are often not looked on when it comes to reparations. It just seems like, oh, it's money and and a lot of other things, but the ability to operate as a community, I think, is something that we have to understand that has been stripped due to the Jim Crow segregation, all these other things. Is that it's not about the individual per se. It's about who we are as a community, as a culture, as a community, as a commune, as a group of people with the same goals and aspirations and things that we want to work for as a group. So when you think of things in those light, the additional effort, this is where the supports come in. They're like things that we have to do extra that other groups do not have to do simply because of the amount of cultural loss that we've received, right? We have to, I always make a joke. Nigerians don't care what they eat because everything they eat has already been worked out by their ancestors. So it's already got the vegetables and the balanced diet, and things like that. Well, we as African Americans, we have to be very conscious because our food source is not based on nutrition and a lot of years of working on recipes and things like that. Our food is based on our survival. Learning Inkaru mentioned, she just had to talk to her parents and grandparents, and even from her name, and can tell you exactly where she's from in Nigeria, which tribe she's from, how they spell it, could even tell you the particular small town that she comes from. So there's so many, cultural markers that we are not familiar with as African Americans that, if you don't know, then how can you ask for it? How can you say that these are the reparations we need, right? So this additional effort, it's extra. It's a lot of work, right? You have to do all this digging just to find out where you're from while other people are just looking at their names. Right. So these additional work, these take time, they take energy, they take resources, and these are the kind of cultural supports we need in the African American community in order for us to have the things, because culture brings people together. So it's no wonder why we're very divided when a lot of these cultural elements are just simply not there. We don't know that they're supposed to be there. We don't know what's supposed to be there. So now that comes the issue, right? And this, while it's the beginning, just finding out where you're from, with a DNA test, it is the foundation. And this is where, you always have to be attached to a land. Culture is attached to land. And knowing where the land you come from is the beginning of everything. So I just wanted to put that little caveat in there in regards to, the extra efforts we have to go through as African American that are not valued even by ourselves. And I think that's an important thing, because if you don't know what is supposed to be there, then how can you know what's missing? So yeah. So that's really all I have to say on that point.
Thank you, Marlon. Um, so Melanie, some of these questions might not necessarily apply to you just yet because we haven't done your reveal, but there are some, of course, you can still answer. Because I know you said you've taken some African or some ancestry tests in the past. So I'll ask both of you, what motivated you to take an African ancestry DNA test in the first place, and did you have any expectations or any hopes before receiving your results? So Michelle, if you can start, please.
Okay, I'll answer it two ways. I've always questioned what my ancestry was pre-slavery since elementary school. Um, and I've never actually thought about taking a DNA test because I'm kind of a conspiracy theory believer. And at the time when it became such a big thing, 23andMe, my older sister did it, and they were saying like they was taking black folks' DNA and blood and doing all this stuff with it. So I actually met Marlon while I was on a spiritual journey, taking an Uber ride to a dance performance, and we got talking. Y'all know Marlon like to talk. I like to talk. And he told me what he was doing, and I saw it as an opportunity. Like I've always wondered what was like before slavery, because like we wasn't just learning about the cotton gin and the peanut man, but what nor here, say there. And I would have dreams actually when I was younger about Egypt. Like I would be like, I don't remember being a slave because we talk about post-traumatic slave syndrome in the body and nervous system, but I do remember like as far as I can remember like Egypt, because as I learned about when I found out my tribe, that they were saying like some of the folks migrated from Egypt in like the 15th some century, and I'm like, oh snap, like okay, but also everyone probably migrated from Egypt if you're into that etymology of uh, history. But once I met Marlon and saw that, whoa, this could be mad beneficial for not just me, but for my daughters, because I had actually lost my mom exactly a year previous before that. So it was an extremely big deal because my mother, when she passed, we learned a lot of things about her that we did not know. And it left us still wondering, what else? Dot dot dot. Virginia, Louisiana. We all know from the slave trade how that happened, but what happened before? Let's rewind. So I want to shout out to Marlon for just offering such of a opportunity, because I've never heard of anything like that before him, except for the clear folk style, 23andMe and stuff, and I didn't actually trust them. So I'm grateful that spirit led me to that, to trust it. And then it literally like opened up the floodgates on my spirituality once I did take the test, and took me on a broader journey, and then wrapped things into place of like, okay, I get my great grandma, I get my mom's side, I get why the food is how we get together, because we're alchemists, we're hoodoo voodoo, like we use that to pour love into each other, and that's the way that we even now connect, is through like the alchemy style of like herbs and food, because that was that that was tried. So I hope that answered the question.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you. Melanie, how about you?
Well, two things. One is when I found your program last year, I was trying to figure out ways. My family had just, I guess it'd been a year at that point, come back from South Africa, and we're kind of wanting to still be connected in some ways or have some traditions that maybe I hadn't explored. Yeah, living in America. And so I think you guys had a Kwanzaa program. And so I'm like, this is very interesting because I was just thinking how I wanted to learn more about Kwanzaa because for many years and even just growing up in the Christian faith, it's always been kind of taught to me like, you don't know about that. That's kind of different. But as I learned about its history, and even just the goals of Kwanzaa, it kind of made me like, okay, this is actually something good. And I wish I had discovered this earlier. So there was that. I have a husband. It's the second thing, and he is a native Texan, wearing cowboy boots and all, and he has done a lot with his ancestral work. He's got a little bit more, I say, 23 in me, in him. And so he has been just exploring that. He wrote a book earlier this year about his family history. So not that I was jealous, but it would be nice to know where my people have come from. And so those are definitely motivating factors. And I guess I might as well say this is because I have studied, the Bible and try to live according to its principles, is that's one of the things that I see in the Old Testament is how they can chronicle their history. When I was in South Africa, and you've mentioned it earlier, I could go to a Xhosa person, a Zulu person, and they could tell me their clan through each generation. And so it did grieve me that in terms of like my kids, they don't have, a start. It's like we kind of guess and ho hum, but just some of the pride, the identity, and even just like when you know where your people have come from, it changes you. It changes how you live. And so that's probably would be the third thing that really kind of propelled me to wanting to know more about my people.
Awesome.
Powerful.
Awesome. Awesome. I'll answer the question in a different way. I'll say what motivated me to get this specific African ancestry DNA test into the program. I found it to be very culturally responsive. It's an African American company, and they particularly made sure that things like they destroy. That's why it costs so much. Costs so much because they don't make money on the back end. So they use your DNA, find out they have a very big database of DNA samples, and once they use it, they destroy it, right? So that's one thing, because one of the lenses that that you have to appreciate in the African American community is that our view of medicine and medical practices is skewed with racial prejudice because a lot of our doctors are not from our communities. So we look at the Tuskegee experiment or forced sterilizations and other sorts of medical malpractice, experimenting on slaves. These things are in our DNA and we respond with a flight pattern once we get in, anywhere close to something that's not what we're used to, or so medicine has never made us feel comfortable, right? So it's important that when I was looking at this thing, what do I want to use? That was the primary thing, to overcome and to not act like, because I know something is missing and I know that we want it and we need it. But on the other hand, right, there's a lot that has happened since that loss, and we need to make sure that that is addressed. What else did I want to say? Yeah, then finally, I wanted to talk about how the other reason why we chose this test is because it grounds you in an actual piece of land, in an actual place with an actual clan. Not I'm 10% um, Nigerian, 10%. Even Nigeria is a fictitious aberration of an English person that said, I want this to be Nigeria, right? What kingdom do you really come from in Africa, right? And let's figure out that land so you can learn more and start a foundation. My people do this or they do that, or, these are our traits. And I find it very important, very fulfilling when when you have that knowledge. I only had half of that knowledge because my dad's side is where I had history and chronicle back to my early days. And then when I tried to actualize myself in the same manner that I did as a Nigerian, right, with Lebanese descent, I didn't even know when they came from Lebanon, all these other things. When I try to do that on my mom's side, then I came with the same issues and all the extra problems. I came now, in all confessions, I just found comfort in my dad's side, and I have not. My mom took some 23andMe's and things. She doesn't know she's, I have to work on her to do the African ancestry. But anyway, long story short, um, it's important, that chronicle and that feeling of emptiness. And there's a kind of like, I think Melanie kind of touched on it. It's a kind of envy. It's a kind of like feeling less than. And because like you see Caribbean Day Parade, where's our parade? You see, all these intricate different dishes, and ours is just this and that. Or maybe people make fun of chitlins, or, like there's all these indignities that come that are not expressed, that are not like we, because like I said, the main issue is that we don't have anything to compare it to. So we're just, go through all the indignities one after the other, not understanding and not and feeling kind of, like I said, singled out because we are the only people in the world that don't have this land and this knowledge. That even Native Americans, what happened to them was tragic, a big Holocaust, but they're on their land and they can point to that this is my tribe and this is what we are and this is who we are. And we have never, and had that, blessing of to say that this is where we're from. This is my land. This is my tribal, cultural land. And every human being has a right to that. And that's why I feel so strongly that this is part of the reparations process that is not being talked about and needs to actually, and it's, to be honest, is I feel more important than anything else. Because if you don't know where, like I said, you don't, it sounds so cliche, but if you don't know where you're coming from, then where are we going? What are we actually trying to create? This imaginary world that we don't really even have a real clear picture of what it actually looks, smells, or tastes like. So, this is, that's why we chose the African Ancestry. And it's a very good program. Like I said, I always tell people to go and try it out. Because like I said, those two reasons. So.
Thank you, Marlon. Really love that. Um, so, if this next question, as I mentioned earlier, with my podcast, one of the things that I focus on is the African immigrant experience primarily. Again, from my childhood, um, the home that I grew up in, my dad was intentional about telling us about our culture. The only thing that unfortunately, many people in my generation, our parents weren't very successful in passing the language on. And what I mean by that is many African millennials who are living in the diaspora, the average, and I don't have the stats, but just by talking to people, I would say about 80%, if not more, don't speak their native language. You have some who, maybe the millennials, like me, they have a relatively good handle of the language in sense of in terms of hearing it. So maybe if my mom is talking to me, or my aunts or someone, I can understand, I can comprehend it, but the actual speaking part would take a lot of effort. Like, I have to be intentional with doing that. And then for Gen Z, or even younger millennials, um, a lot of them, they pretty much don't have any command of the language. Like, with some of the kids in my church who are Igbo, because I'm an Igbo person, if I try to say even basic Igbo things to them, they don't even know what I'm saying. And like, sometimes they even pronounce their names in a very Americanized way. So I'm just saying this to kind of let you know that, identity is something that, cultural identity, you have to be really intentional with it. I would say even on the African side, so it's not just an African American thing. Um, in the African diaspora, there are many times where the identity piece sometimes get lost. And for different reasons, when you come to a different country, especially for younger children, you're trying your best to fit in, again, just because you are a child and you're trying to get to know who you are. But then when you add this foreign name and, these foreign foods and these foreign traditions, I mean, you can already imagine, getting picked on. And, so those are some reasons why I would say cultural identity and, you know, can change. But the long and short of what I'm trying to say is, I am very happy to see that in today's world in 2023, a lot of African millennials and then African, Gen Z kids, they are very proud of their African heritage because of social media. I talk about this all the time. Um, when I go on social media, even Americans, African Americans, white Americans, other groups of Americans, they love Africa. They love Afro beats. They love African food. This is something that when I was a kid, people were like shying away from it, or they were making fun of you, and different things like that. So it's very beautiful to see that things have changed. And even with you all, desiring to have that connection with Africa, it's just beautiful to see. And in a relatively short amount of time, I came here in 1996. I was a kid. I was 4 years old. So to see how much the world has changed from the 90s to the 2000s to this point, as it relates to pride in African heritage and pride in who we are as a people, is a very beautiful thing to see. And I'm very happy to be part of this and to even continue to share people's stories, because I think that's how we do this kind of thing. That's how we continue to grow this understanding and awareness of our Africanness in the different shades and textures and flavors and everything. So I say that very long thing
No, it
to
wasn't
say,
long. It was okay.
Marlon knows I don't talk much, so
Yeah, but
whenever I have some
but
moments.
it's great stuff. It's great stuff. And I actually wanted to
Yeah,
respond. So when you get done.
sure, sure. Well, let me just pose my question, and then I'll let you all respond to that. So, how has learning about your African ancestry, I guess, influenced your own sense of identity? Marlon, I don't know if you wanted to respond first,
Well, I
or give
just
it to
wanted to
Michelle.
respond to what you said before that
Sure.
America is deculturalizing in nature. It just like so I just wanted, like to kind of give like if one generation you can see such a big cultural loss, it is deculturalizing in its essence that by going to school that you will not be exposed to anything but Eurocentric cultures, and that affects Africans as well. So just to give you an idea of how long the African American experience is here. So what has that done? There were schools in this country that used to deculturalize Native Americans. What would they had a saying? Save the man and kill the Indian, meaning kill the cultural part of the Indian and try to train them to be less Indian. Like Native American, not to use the word Indian, but Native American, Indigenous American. So just to give you that center context, that America in its context in itself is a deculturalizing place. It will take the culture out of us, and we would hope that when we get Afro American Academy going, and some of the stuff, this is where we can provide platforms to keep some of the language and and things like that, food and recipes, things like that going. I think it's one of the long-term goals that we have. But I just want to respond to that. But you said how was learning about African influence? Let everybody else talk. I just want to let's respond. I just want to respond. Right.
Yes, I could be long-winded too, but I'll keep it to two things that pop into my mind. Um, I know now, especially I started my own business 2 years ago, Soul Fire Movement. I'm building a solar power mobile dance studio, just to plug that out there. Um, Boston, growing up in Boston is very clear folk. It's very white dominant here. And I've always been like the only Black girl in some of these spaces because of just who I am as a human being and innateness of my energy, not knowing. This is just coming from wisdom of learning and having questions and then being like, oh, I know after learning I was from the Bamaleke tribe of Cameroon. I belong here. There's an essence of I belong here. And there is an essence of we're all human, but I am better than what you colonized me to think I am as a Black African American. Like, whoa, yo, rich girl history. How dare we have the mindset that we have when we were emperors, empresses, pharaohs, pharaoh, but like, and I think of the dreams that I had and my past life regression memories of being a queen, right? Or a warrior. My fiance says I have like these warrior shoulders, like warrior back neck. And, and I like the dancer in me, right? And I think of the grit that I have and have honed in because of now I understand what that bloodline comes from. Now I understand the meaning of the generational ancestry mathematics behind it. I understand like I belong here. And winning international dance hall queen was another stamp of like I belong. Like yo, your essence, like spirit, you're being remembered right here. Like I think about my lifeline of dance and where it brought me. Like queendom has always been there. So for me, that brings in like wisdom, not like queen what we think of now, but like wisdom, integrity. I'm big on that. Like honing in on humanity, like that pure optimistic energy of what I believe Africa represents as a whole. Like we are not devilish and evil by nature. And we could talk about that, how whatever. But the second thing that I wanted to say, if I could even remember, I get to truly like share this with my daughters who our family, it's light now. Our we have no our my mom and dad are gone, my grandma, my grandparents are all gone, and I get to hopefully, Marlon, like you said, how generational, how our traditions and stuff are being taken away by one generation. I hope and pray that that is still instilled in my daughters, that then they have their own kids and be like, if at all they forget, or if slavery gets diminished through history books or in the home, this bloodline of like, we stem from like Cameroon, Bamileke tribe. That's deep for me. So I pray that you know, knowledge continues on as a legacy with my daughters. And that is the ultimate aha moment of this whole experience. Because there are just so many things that I had learned, that I started to learn once I dove in to learning about Cameroon and the Bamileke tribe, and then it instilled in me the understanding of why I am the way I am, and why I'm doing what I'm doing for the future, and honestly, on a spiritual essence, why for sure I want to go back home. I have people that are like, be careful, going on. I'm like, nah, nah, nah. Spirit saying, get off of this latitude of longitude of America. Spirit is saying, go back home. Where will that be? I don't know, but I have to go and experience that. So I'm gonna just end it there. That's completely how it's like entered and altered my life, and continuously does, because this information that I'm constantly learning now with the internet. Pulling things out of the wash. What goes into the wash comes out in the rinse. Like now books are being exposed about things that were covered. And, so I appreciate the times, like you said, where we grew up in a time where it was like almost trying to blotch us out of history during the 70s and the 80s. Like, whoa, the family ties that were broken during that time. And now, like you said, the young folks, are bringing it back into us. And it is unfortunate that the language part, because I've danced with African artists, and I've also had to, that was the second thing I was thinking, I've had to kind of battle the African diaspora of like, I'm Black American, they're from Sierra Leone, from Nigeria, and like this misinformation about what it's like to be Black in America, and they didn't learn what it's like to be Black in America, and we didn't learn what it was like to be, what it was like to grow up in different parts of Africa. So breaking that bridge too, and having those conversations with my artist friends and with my African friends now, it's like we could bridge it and understand that like there was a hysteria that was meant to cut that line off for us to like bridge. So shout out to Marlon for all that you're doing to literally bridge the gap. So that is that.
So you said so many things that like like I'm trying my best not to get emotional because literally, like I said, whenever I hear African Americans talk about like being intentional about connecting with Africa and their history, like it just like makes my heart skip several beats. And I think what you said, I wrote down a few things. The piece about cultural memory, that's something that I personally study. Again, because of the experience of the African American, you know, there are a lot of things that obviously happened, generations past that even you 5, 6, 7, 8 generations later can somehow remember it. There's actually a real science behind it. It's not that we're just talking for the sake of talking. It's genetic memory is a real thing. Cultural memory is a real thing. And the other thing too, the piece about being intentional, even like what I mentioned earlier about the language part, um, it is our responsibility to carry the culture, to learn the culture. Um, again, a lot of people in my generation, who came here as kids or who were born here or whatever the case may be, now that you're an adult, I hear a lot of them say things like, "Oh, my parents didn't teach me the language," and it's like, yes, that might have been the case because, as immigrants, a lot of things, they're trying their best to, adapt to the new culture, raise their kids, have the best life for their kids, et cetera, et cetera. Most of them didn't have time for their kids, if we're honest. Um, so again, instead of blaming your parents for, not doing what they could have done better, at least in that regard, it's your responsibility as a full grown adult who has the internet and the world of information in front of you to gain that information. Because I think in previous generations, as I was mentioning earlier, you had to like literally go into the deep archives, like pretty much be like a like you have to become a researcher and get all the information. But I think in today's world, you can literally go online and just type a few things and find everything you need. Of course, you'll take it steps ahead of that, but it's a lot easier in today's world to, learn your traditional language or learn some things about, who your people were and everything else like that. But it does take being intentional about even documenting that history, and that's something that I'm trying to do for myself and for my siblings and my family. So I love that you said all of that. Um, Melanie, please, if you can just tell us, I know you went out at 1 second, but if you could share with us about how learning about your ancestry um, influenced your sense of identity.
Well, I think to answer this question, the best way, and I'll be brief, is to share about how I felt coming home in 2021 from South Africa. I had had a marvelous time there, of feeling an immense amount of freedom that I've never experienced. From like, why do you wear bright colors? Nobody ever asked, because everybody was dressed in brightly colored. Why is there joy? Why do you sing? Why do you dance in church? Why is there music in your heart? Um, but I always felt this sense of loss when people would look at me and assume that I was Xhosa, but I didn't know the language. And it's like, how could that be, sissy? Why don't you know your language? And I'd have to say, with shame, I'm African American. We didn't have it. And so that's why this is so important to me, uh, is I'll know. And maybe I will get on some Duolingo or whatever there is, and discover my mother tongue.
Powerful, powerful. Um, I don't know if Marlon stepped away or if he had any comments before we go to the next question.
I guess just real brief about the intentionality and about the steps that we need to, like what I think, yes, you're right. The kids have to kind of do what they have to do to like learn, but I feel like that is where we're failing them. There's infrastructure and work that we need to do to set up things where it's easier for them to learn these things. They can be, we can make sure that it's in the schools, or we can make sure there's after school programs that are keeping this knowledge base strong, and not just for Africans. So Africans can kind of do it for themselves, but then because it's inclusive, oh, well, you know what? If I want to learn how to make a goosey soup, right? There's this after school program that will teach me, and that's where we can. So, and that takes me to, I know, like I'm hoping, this is my prayer, that whilst we're assembling more and more winners, right? We're actually grew. I hope that this is growing into a team, and eventually we'll have enough people on this team to start taking specific roles in trying to create some of this infrastructure. We did when we first started. We wanted to get people to go back to Africa and like get money. That's why we had that thousand. We raised like $1,200 for Michelle, but we haven't been able to keep certain things going. But it's because we need people to say, you know what, we're a team of 5 people that have done this. We want to make sure that some of this infrastructure, we want to tackle some goals. And then we can now hopefully raise money, now that we have a team that's dedicated to it. I can't do everything. So I have to hopefully, like I said, my prayer is that, one of you guys, as we move on, if we have a bigger team, can start leading an effort to get tickets and let's go to Cameroon, right? I want to go to Cameroon, or let's get some after school programming, maybe be online, so that there'll be, this knowledge base there for anybody who wishes to learn, young and old, and there are many other, aspects. But I think where we can take it and make it more intentional is to build infrastructure that will make it sustainable and long going, not everybody learning, and because everybody's doing the same thing over and over again on their own. So and you guys should be commended, and I want to really commend both of you for doing, and even you, Inkaru, for doing because there's cultural loss in your case, of course not as acute, but for doing the extra work. But we have to understand, we're the outliers. Most people are not going to put that extra effort in. They're trying to put food on the table. they're dealing with their issues that they got going on now, or they just don't know where to start. So I feel like this is the next level. We have to start thinking, what can we do to build little systems? And it's not complicated. Well, after school program, that's not, I mean, there's many after school programs, but there's nothing to particularly deal with this cultural issues that are not being addressed. And like I said before, it's because you have to know where you're coming from to know that it's missing, right? You don't know what to make the after school program on, because you don't know that like you didn't look at African food to be a natural balance of nutrients and proteins, and you just didn't look at it like that, just their food, right? Somebody has to kind of put you in that perspective. So like I said, we're still got what, like 5 6 deep. Maybe when we get to 10, or even now, if somebody wants to go, I'm sure we'd want to support that group. But that is, I think, the next level, is to try and figure out how we can, as a team, start tackling these things that only us understand, that have been through this process.
Thank you, Marlon. So I guess my next question, I just wanted to ask our lovely ladies, in what ways have you explored or embraced the cultures associated with your African ancestry? Again, Millie, I know, we're still waiting to do your reveal, but, just from just from what you know so far, or from what you've, done your previous research on, do you have you tried to connect with certain groups, maybe attended some cultural events? So, Michelle, if you can start us off, please.
Mostly just through dance. I've just been on a broader scale. I've just been able to just dance with different African bands and African artists. That's the most, and not specifically anything to Cameroon or the Bamileke tribe. It's been just like reading articles and notes about finding like why am I so interested in dance and style, but and why I don't have a necessarily particular style, but I haven't dove too deep into like the language. I wouldn't even know what language to even know, to even dive into, but just through dance is mostly how I dove into it on the broad scale of finding about just my African ancestry. Because it took me down a rabbit hole. It was like, all right, Cameroon, all right, Bamileke tribe, all right, spiritual essences, and then it just was like this rabbit hole of all things Africa, and on a spiritual level, I've just been able to dive deeper into that element, which has been really joyous because on another scale, I've like combined it with like, all right, I'm not gonna go off the chain, but that's been my experience. And girl, I'm about to go like
Culture guides.
quantum scale science, environmental, herbs and teas, but mostly just through dance, and I'll end it there.
I think we need more culture guides, because I think that is dangerous to give people some information. Like you said, you're going to go into everything. Where do you start? But if you have a person that is from your culture, that you can call up and talk. See, this is what I'm saying. These are some of the work that we have to do to build infrastructure around ourselves. Because if you have that, then it would help guide you to, what language, and the different, because you'd have a person, not just the
Word,
internet.
word, mute.
All right. For me, because of the work that I've done, I know that, let's see. Yeah, the first time I went to the continent was in 2001. And the simple question was, so who do we look like? What tribe am I from? And the people of Nigeria were so gracious. They said then I think I was Ivu. Yes. So I was like, oh, this is cool. Yay. So that was exciting. When we went to Ghana, we took tours at Elmina Castle in Cape Coast. And in that particular tour, which is a very spiritual experience anyway, because you see possibly the place or a place similar to where your ancestors entered through the door of no return. And it is, I mean, it is something to think about what they had to endure as they went through the transatlantic. And then in South Africa, I think because there's so many tribes, so a lot of people were very nomadic, and so they traveled from all parts of the continent to there. You get a little taste of everybody, and so I probably there. It's definitely the appreciation for land, which I didn't have value for before I left. And that's probably because nobody's ever had anything to pass down for generations, and that's historical. But just that with how they tied so much of their culture uh, with their clan, their people, their language, and everything. So there's just been like little elements where I've taken bits and pieces, just things like, oh, this is beautiful. Oh, I like that, but nothing. Nothing not too deep of a dive, I guess is what I want to say, but just the traveling has helped me to have a greater understanding.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that, Melanie. So the next question, Michelle, Melanie, it's kind of similar, but have you been able to trace any, I guess, ancestors or even immediate family members as a result of your DNA test? And how do you feel about the potential of connecting with people that you might have, might not have known before?
For me, absolutely not. But that would be extremely important because I grew up in a big family where we congregated a lot over everything. Like Marlon said, like birthdays, holidays. If it wasn't a holiday, my grandmother felt like every Sunday was a holiday because it was like big meals. But that would be absolutely so divine and so perfect because I'm kind of yearning for that. I miss it. Again, like our family's getting smaller now and it's kind of, all my sisters, there's four of us together and we all have our kids, but that's it. We don't have any of our elders. So it would be so beautiful to connect with a more expanded side that I never knew about, even if it was a fake cuz. Like, what up, fake cuz? You might have known some of my tribe people. Like, so also Melody, shout out because I feel like your spirit is shaking you all over. Like, this is beautiful. I can't wait to hear from where you're from because I don't know too many people that get to travel to any part of Africa if you don't have the means or if you're not part of some type of like program. So as you're speaking, I'm like, yo, Spirit's taking her around, like, and let her hear. That's amazing. So I just wanted to say that, like, ooh, ooh.
Well, thank you, Michelle. Like I said, the privilege, it was just the calling that I was following, but there's a scripture in the Bible that says when you leave your father and mother, you'll have mothers and brothers and sisters. And that's exactly what I've experienced over and over, time and time again, with each continent that I've gone through, just kindred spirits that have allowed me to explore and to learn and to really to see how diverse God has created this world. I mean, from language to skin tones to hair textures, there's so much beauty that colonization has robbed us of, to be honest. But I can't really speak to the specific ancestors. No, I have not done that. But the potential of connecting, and I think this kind of goes back to growing up in this small community in Little Rock, Arkansas, where we weren't close to a lot of my family members. So again, the family reunions were the only touch point, and then it was so awkward because you like I don't know these people. Whereas like my mom and her first cousins, they all grew up in the small community, so they knew each other, and I mean they were like brothers and sisters. But for us, we have been spread throughout the USA and for me for a time across the ocean, that there was a disconnect. And so that potential and that even that desire to always connect has always been there. I feel like it's part of a part of my calling and part of my life is like how to rebuild community. And so one of those keys is by connecting and understanding where I've come from.
I actually wanted to chime in real quick. Or Marlon, did you have something to say? Okay. I think the point that you just brought just now, Melanie, was very powerful because as far as like family reunions being awkward and stuff, so actually traveled to Nigeria for the first so like I said earlier, I came as a kid, and I've been in the country since that time. So from 1996 until 2013, I've been in the country the whole time. Um, so I actually excuse me, the semester before I graduated college, I decided to go for Christmas to, just spend some time with my family and everything. And yes, it was definitely awkward because like you have like the aunt or the uncle that your mom or dad is like close to, so you talk to those cousins maybe once in a while, and then you also have the aunts and uncles that your mom or dad don't really talk to that much, so you definitely don't really have much of a relationship with them. So like I remember one time going to one of my aunt's house, and it was just awkward because it's like I haven't seen you since I was a kid, and you don't really have the strongest relationship with my mom, so it's like hi auntie, but it's like it was just it felt kind of forced. And even meeting my cousins, like some of them, I mean, they were very receptive. Obviously they're happy to see me, coming from America and everything else like that. But I can definitely see how that initial interaction will be a little bit uncomfortable unless you're a person who just, loves, just meeting people, which I think Michelle, that's I'm sure that's who you are. You can meet anybody and talk to them, Marlon, that's you. So I feel like it depends on your personality, but like
Mhm.
Melanie, I think you and I are pretty similar. Like we're not like
Mhm.
very, very like
Mhm.
I'm all over you or whatever. So I think definitely it can be like a learning curve, but I think it's something that like, once you get to know that person and get to share some time and memories together and laughs together and food, of course. Um, because with one of my cousins, like we spent, because I was there for about 2.5 or 3 weeks, and we have like so many funny memories, just silly things that happened. And, so those are things that you just take with you in life and remember and, just kind of build that relationship. So I love that you brought that point up. Um, so I guess in the next question I wanted to ask you both, um, and I think one of you mentioned it earlier, but in what ways do you think it's important to preserve and celebrate African cultural heritage, and also, the African American part as well? How do you preserve it? How do you celebrate it as individuals and collectively? I know you mentioned family reunions, so I guess maybe outside of that.
Yeah, for me, I have celebrated it, African culture, food number one, and then we did do Kwanzaa. We did Christmas and Kwanzaa, and even with Christmas, my mother made sure that we had Black Jesus painted um, in the house. And geesh, I've been grateful to I'm just grateful for the artists that I've worked with because they've exposed me to so much. And Boston has the African festival that they do every year, and it's just dope to see people. Um, it sparks interest in other to want to know more about the culture. As far as like preserving it, for me personally, with my daughters, is this. It was them coming to the Museum of Fine Arts and experiencing that whole ordeal. It's in how I dress for sure. I can't even believe I forgot about this because it's so embedded in me. But I was learning about the Ndinkra symbols. I rock my Ndinkra symbols on my clothes. Actually, Soul Fire movement. I cannot believe I forgot all this. Soul Fire movement is actually an Ndinkra symbol of unity. It's just it looks like the wave of water, and it's literally the I believe it's like the two chains that represents unity. I can't believe I forgot about that because I just want to embed that in. Oh, and I want to embed that. You know what I'm saying? Like that spirit, right? Like let's embed it even through my business to of remembrance. So I think that that's one way. That's how I do it, and then including it in our everyday lives, so that we won't ever forget it in the future, even if the language is lost. Because when we come here for this American dream, they do rip us apart of just our natural our being. So I hope that answers your question. Damn, that just made me emotional because I totally forgot. This is the example of what happened when I found out. I started embodying it so much that I live it and I be it without even questioning it now. How beautiful is that? Being the example of.
Very
Wow,
righteous.
beautiful, beautiful, beautiful.
Mhm.
Oh,
Yeah. Mm. Well,
to say much.
what was the question again?
Yeah,
I forgot the question. I'm just having a moment.
I'm all taken in by the emotion. I don't know what to
Yeah.
say. You know, that's something to keep me
Yeah.
quiet.
Right.
Um,
Mm. But you know what? It's funny. Like when she was talking, there was something that I learned over in South Africa, because we would make appointments in our Western ways of meeting with students, and just to hear more of their stories and their journey. And I'm like, why are people always late and when they don't show up? And that's when I learned that the way that African culture, or some African cultures, it's not about, okay, I got to go from this appointment to that one, but it's just kind of being in the moment. It's a very circular circle, the circle of life. That whole reality is a way of life, and it changes just how you think. And so I know I haven't done the best of it since I've been back, but just trying to create space where I can be slow enough to connect with people, because man, America moves so fast, and that's been a challenge. It's just like not having enough time to culturally connect or to hear where people have come from, where they're going, what are their hopes and their dreams. And so I know going forward, that's what I I desire to do. But again, it's just like now that I'm back in the States, it's just like, what are the traditions? What are the cultures? Like, again, by me growing up in a traditional like way of sense of like a black church, there are certain things that they did. I'm like, why? This just takes all day. But then there's some things that I do appreciate about it now. We can make it a little shorter, but there's things that I appreciate about it now, that I didn't appreciate before, in ways that we honor, the elders, we honor the leaders. I appreciate that. And even just like I said earlier, just learning what is Kwanzaa. Again, not to be afraid of it, but how does that connect me? And how does that help me and teach my children and their children to be able to learn about where they come from? And I don't know if you shared this, Marlon, maybe, or somebody did during that Kwanzaa talk last year, of how like we just don't have an intentional pause. But think about like slaves had time, those that were time off after Christmas into the new year, where there was time to connect. Now we have a Juneteenth holiday, because my husband's family is a part of the Texas cultural history, and they've celebrated Juneteenth both in Texas and Mexico, just being intentional about pausing and reflecting of what it meant for those soldiers who landed and the people to understand that they're now free. And they could leave, and even just the challenges that they experience post that. So there's several things: Juneteenth, Kwanzaa, just a way of life that is, I don't know, that rejects the Western ways, that causes us to rush and not simply be, not have time to connect with one another, and even and our communities, to hear their heart, their hopes and dreams. So those are the things that I definitely want to preserve and celebrate with our African American and African cultural heritage.
I want to add some things because I forgot. This conversation could go so broad, but some of the things that I've also done that I can't believe I've just embodied things as I've been learning, that it's just now beautiful second
Mhm.
nature. But I recommend books. Um, During the panoramic, thanks to the that money that came in, I bought Dr. Laila Africa's whole set volume, and
Mm.
he has so much information about African diaspora, the Gullah folks, and he has this book on Per Ankh about how to embody your home. They call it feng shui, but like Per Ankh is like how you even embody your home in a way with the symbols, like the Steelers symbol. I believe it's like that hook with the sun, because my dad's like a Steelers fan. That is the symbol of like family and unity. And I put that rug. I found a rug where I put it in the dining room where we commune. So I recommend that off the top, like just the books, and even through my movement practices, I've embodied the African chakras. It's a very broad realm, but I teach that. So we're talking. I hope I answered the question on how do we like keep the legacy going? How do we keep remembering? But I as I learn in life in general, I share it with my peers. So a lot of my clients are clear folk. I don't know why, but they there. Maybe because I teach them stuff. And I've talked about the chakras and the African essence of it instead of like the Indian essence, and what these yoga kemet movements mean, and what the African orishas that embody the different symbols, because we pop off with like Beyonce, shout out to her. People have remarks about it, but shout out to Beyonce because she had the Oshun era going on, and it did spark something, thankfully, in women who wanted to learn more about their African like culture. So, I think during, with the music too, with everyone wanting to learn about African dances, is so interesting because, no offense, and I really apologize for this. Like, Nkaru, I think you said this earlier. Somebody said it like yeah, it was you, because it was like back in the days, it was, being African was like looked, yeah, it was not cool. And I remember, well, I don't know why, but we would call each other African booty scratchers. I don't know if y'all ever heard that before, but like, why? Because we didn't know. We were kids, like, oh, we call each other African booty scratchers. Like, me and my cousins, like, thinking it was a joke, but it's so funny because now it's almost like a fad. Like, now everybody want to be African, but I think subconsciously it's making us, the diaspora, wake up to it, because when these dances are not just dances, like in dance hall and the Jamaican culture, those dances are just not dances. They stem from something. They stem from cooking. They stem from working, and it stems from an essence. So I love that, through movement. I hope and pray that I'm keeping that legacy of the African culture through movement and through the essence of what I'm learning, and just passing it on to folks that have an interest in wanting to know more. And then I hope it sparks something in them. But I just wanted to say that because Dr. Laila Africa has a great, rest in peace, great set of books, about all things from, the moon cycles. And also, Marlon, I thought of this, where the MFA, like, that was a ritual for me. That was a rite of passage. He has a book that talks about African rites of passages, women in the womb cycle. My experience was traumatic because I didn't know, I didn't learn anything, but like, those are like rites of passages. And so I appreciate that I had that thought when you were talking, like, oh snap, at the Museum of Fine Arts, you know, that was a rite of passage with the drummers welcoming, wake up, ancestors! And then, we had that white lady, introducing me to my culture and reading the things, remember? She's like, welcome to the museum. This is where your people are from. And it's like, okay, thanks. But just joking, but I just wanted to share that.
Oh man, thank you, Michelle. I know we're a little bit pressed for time, but I just wanted to make this very quick comment. Michelle, you said something earlier that resonated, and I think this is part of why everything that I try to be very intentional with what it is that I do. I do have this sense of like panic or urgency maybe sometimes when I think about the elders leaving us because again, when I came here, my parents were very intentional about making sure we were part of the Igbo community here. I talk about it all the time, so I'm not going to waste too much time on it. So growing up, we would always go to different functions where we would have celebrations like the New Yam Festival and other things like that, where we would learn more about our culture. And other, Igbo parents who came to the country around the same time as my parents did. So they were very intentional about like making sure we had these types of events to learn about the culture. So I grew up with a lot of these kids who, of course, from different homes, but they're like my cousins, if you want to call it that, because we came here around the same time and everything else. We're from the same ethnic group, the Igbo people. But now that we are all, again, we're all adults, many of us have our own kids. And then again, our parents are older, some are no longer here, some, so it's like now we have to be the adults. We have to be the ones to bring the kids together and train that next generation and share some of these cultural traditions with them. But, again, unfortunately for many of us, it wasn't really like we saw the culture growing up, but I would say one thing that we missed is that it wasn't like instilled in us deeply. Like I don't remember ever having like, okay, this is your great grandfather. This is what we did back in the days. Here are some folk tales. I don't remember having those types of um, cultural discussions. It was more of I'm hearing my parents speak the language. I'm hearing them talk about certain things, but it wasn't like a here's a cultural lesson. So for me, I just kind of panic a little bit thinking about, okay, how do I put all these pieces together and share it with the next generation? But with that in mind, I would really love for us to have our cultural reveal for Melanie, and then we'll have our final remarks and then questions, and then we'll,
Right,
wrap.
right, right. That's what I've been waiting for. That's what I've been waiting for. Okay, so guys, one thing I just want to say before we go to the next slide, which is the reveal. I want to thank both of you for being understanding that I think in all this talk that we've had, the name of this program is called Lives in Me. What you guys have been describing in the last, hour or so we've been talking has been what has been living inside of you. That's what drove you all over the world, Melanie. That's what brought you in and to take Michelle, to take the brave step of doing the test, even though you had some reservations. There is something that it lives in you. We're not putting anything there in. We are just trying to find pathways to get it out. And that's what this is about. And when, you know, a lot of the ones that like the purpose of this program is to kind of recognize those of you who it lives in you so much that it takes you that extra step to do all this extra work that nobody is, you know, asking you to do, nobody's paying you to do. You're just doing it, right? From some kind of spiritual movement inside of you that you don't even know where it's coming from. And that is the essence of the Lives in Me program and the winner. So without further ado, the moment of truth is here. And let me just get my little thing. Melanie Best, the fifth Lives in Me challenge winner. I'm proud to announce that you tested positive for the Tikar people living in Cameroon. Yeah, going to
Oh my
Cameroon.
gosh. Oh, oh my goodness. How do you say it again? The Tikara people.
Yeah, the Tikar. There is
Oh.
actually, so we had a little bit of like, we put a little bit of something together. There's some
Mm-hmm.
artwork, and you know, you can see some people there. And I thank Inkiru for putting these slides together. Some like traditional chief headdress, and this is like the location. One of the things about it is that my people from the Calabar tribe, Efik tribe in Nigeria, live on the border. So you have to understand that these borders are European induced. So we
Mm-hmm.
could so
Mm-hmm.
really we're tribal. We're kind of we're kind of brothers and sisters in that.
Cool.
There is a little. I know we are pressed for time, so I'm not. Maybe we'll just send this to you. But we did have a little
Yes.
video that we'll send to you where you can use. But we're going to watch it. But you can just see it later. It's about 5 minutes long, and it kind of gives you a little bit of understanding
Mm.
about the video. We're not going to go into it
Many
now.
African Americans.
Click over. These are some notable people of Tikar descent that are in the United States. So Spike Lee, Sinbad, uh, Condoleezza Rice, Don Cheadle's, right. And oh my
Huh.
goodness, I'm forgetting the.
Anthony Anderson,
Yes, and what this lady here? This one I was.
lovely Cheryl Lee Ralph. I love her.
Yeah, come on, Marlon. Talk about you know
Oh my
Michael. Come on now. Yeah,
Wow.
so that's that.
Wow.
Congratulations, Anthony.
Congratulations. So tell us
Well,
how you
thank you.
feeling?
Wow, I'm kind of like, oh man, this is gonna make some sense. I can't wait to dive into my own deep waters of figuring it all out. But I'm like, have I heard anybody ever say Cameroon before? I don't know, but this is thrilling. And even what you said about, of course, the borders are very, they're not the actual borders, but it makes sense of why they told me to welcome home, sissy. When I went to Nigeria the first time, like they can see, they could see what was inside of me. And so it's beautiful. Those two connections are made. And they're, yeah, I'm happy to be part of the family.
Welcome.
Welcome home, Melanie. Welcome
Welcome
home.
Oh
home. Welcome home.
gosh.
Welcome home.
Oh,
We're gonna
wow.
So we're going to be doing,
Oh.
we're actually a year behind and we apologize,
Mhm.
but we're going to have to do two next year to catch up. So I'm thinking the winner
Mhm.
from the next competition, which we're going to do during Black History Month, we'll announce in Juneteenth, and then we'll be caught up, and then we can have the next winner because we're a year behind. But yeah, this is just it's a competition. It's kind of like a competition. We're going to work on and I just wanted to quickly say, put this out there. So basically, the next Lives in Me challenge, we're looking for a sixth winner, and it'll be revealed February 29th at 7 p.m. We're going to have another. So save the date. We have a form to fill out. The only requirements are you have to be 18, and we're going to keep it to Boston. This time again, I told actually, um, Melanie, you end up being the outlier that the only person that's ever won is not from Boston. But there was a form, and you fill out the form. You have to be 18 and resident of Boston, and we'll
Mhm.
get back to you. We're gonna have some little things because I do want to make sure that the people that win this competition, it actually lives in them. Some people just want some things because it's free. We don't. No, 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 no. We need energy. We need passion. We need love. We need desire, to know more about who lives in us, and that is what this is about. So I want to thank you and congratulate you once again for everything. And I guess parting words from everybody. And yeah, man, I love y'all. Y'all family.
Beautiful.
What you have to say, Michelle? I know you got something to say.
That's it. Congratulations, congratulations. What's up, cousin? I was just thinking, like you said, people that actually will embody it. So cheers to everyone that you chose because yeah, all those ladies that you got, they truly live it. So thank you so much for having me. Marlon Levy, let's do the work. In Peru, thank you, Melody. Congratulations. This is huge. And I look forward to seeing in the next February or June when they have you talk and what that looks like for the next couple of months for you in the future. So peace and so much love. Wow.
It's like
Beautiful.
everybody is also like I think everybody is Cameroonian. Only one person from
Sierra Leone.
Sierra Leone. Like the first two were Bamileke. Jessica was Cameroon, but she wasn't Bamileke. I can't remember her tribe, but she was Cameroon. Then Stacy was from Sierra Leone, and then we have another Cameroon, but Tikar. She might have been Tikar. She might have Jessica might be. So yeah, this is just awesome. So I mean, you guys don't understand how much it really warms my heart after all these years to hear you guys, really like embracing something that was just like a idea that I thought, but to see here now we're going from number 7, number 6, and then number 7, you know, I mean, I don't know, man. This is just crazy. Y'all just I don't know.
It's
Right. Thank
lovely.
you.
It's lovely.
Well,
Well, we just want to thank you all once again for everything that you've shared tonight. Melanie, we will stay in touch. Obviously, we'll give you like your other information package and everything.
okay.
Thank you so much, Michelle. Really appreciate you. Thank you, Marlon, of course. And we'll continue the conversation. Thank you all once again.
Thank
Thank you.
you.